Biotechnology is now infrastructure, which means it's time for America to decide whether we're building a genome superhighway or just another policy pothole. Welcome back to Beyond the Bill Number, the podcast where we break down legislation so clearly your high school biology teacher might finally forgive you for that frog dissection incident. Today, we're talking biotech, the field that promises miracle cure, sustainable everything, and at least 12 new ethical dilemmas per month. And at the center of it all, Congress's shiny new attempt to wrangle the chaos of the National Biotechnology Initiative Act, or NBIA. Sarah, are you ready to walk us through the bill that wants to Marie Kondo the entire federal biotech landscape?
Absolutely. Nothing sparks joy quite like a reorganized federal agency. So before we kick off all of that, I think let's just start with a little bit of a chat about biotech, things like CRISPR that we hear about a lot in the news, because honestly, before this bill, I had heard about a lot of these things, but really the only thing that I could remember about biotech is from Agent Cody Banks when he was saving Hillary Duff's and the nanobots melted in his shoe, and I just have grown up my entire life afraid that nanobots are going to get into my body and melt and eat me.
Yep.
Like, that's literally it. And that's biotech, right?
That's pretty much what it is. So biotech is absolutely fascinating. It's also terrifying in equal parts. We'll get into some of that. We'll get into some of the ethical dilemmas. But I mean, I've heard it described as the single most important technology that we're currently working on. If you think about all the other things, think about like nuclear technology, all of those kind of things. This is the thing that could be most impactful because it's the thing that allows us potentially to redesign not only all the creatures, plants and animals around us, but ourselves as well. It could allow us to absolutely redefine what it means to be human. So along with AI, this is a sort of leap that, as far as we're aware, no species on this planet has ever taken before.
And obviously what you're talking about with editing ourselves is something that the new TV show Watson is talking all about. CRISPR, genome editing. So what is this?
Absolutely. Well, I should first of all say, of course, that I'm not a biologist or an expert in this. So my knowledge of it is very shaky. And if anybody out there actually knows what they're talking about, they'll probably hate this. But let me try and just very quickly explain what I think it is. So first of all, what does it mean? CRISPR stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. So very catchy.
Yeah.
I think we prefer CRISPR. CRISPR's a great acronym. But basically what it is people may be aware that bacteria can be bad for you, but they can be good as well. And then you also have viruses, and that viruses are much smaller than bacterium. But bacteria themselves can get viruses. Viruses are that small that you actually have viruses that affect bacteria. And a while back, scientists noticed a very curious way that certain bacteria use to defend themselves against viruses. And it was basically by rewriting their own genome. They were able to actually chop bits out of their genome and put other bits into it, which would allow them then to better resist these viruses. So just in this constant battle between sort of viruses and hosts, this was a technique that certain bacteria had evolved. So they therefore looked at this and said, well, okay, maybe we can copy that technique. And that's where CRISPR came from, basically. Over obviously a long period of time, scientists developed the ability to use this bacteria to actually sort of chop and reorganize DNA. And what made it really important was that it was vastly simpler, quicker and cheaper than previous techniques. So rather than having to spend 10 years and $100 million doing this, all you need is a test tube, a laboratory. You can do it in a week, cost you a few $100. Roughly. So that's great, but it's also terrifying because it means that this technology to actually edit genes is now available to a much wider group of people, not all who may have our best interests at heart.
Yes. Moriarty and Watson.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, one of the more new, exciting, it's in our pop culture now, but also biotech goes even to GMOs, to our agriculture. It's all over the place. And this is something that really touches almost every single part of what it means to be a human and how we live our world these days. And it's really this new frontier that a lot of people are very concerned about there being adequate investments in, because There's a lot of investments all over the world. The US is falling a little bit behind. So there's a lot of drama going
It
on
is.
here, as I'm sure is not a surprise to
Mm-hmm.
anyone. And being able to be
Mm-hmm.
innovative in this space is actually really, really important.
Yes, it is within safeguards, of course, because it's
Hmm.
absolutely crucial that this is properly safeguarded. And so, one of the first applications of CRISPR actually was to do with sickle cell anemia that people may
Hmm.
have heard of. So, a really, really unpleasant genetic condition where your red blood cells become deformed, so they become like little sickles, and it really impedes the ability to actually absorb oxygen and so on. So, it's a horrible illness for those people who have it. And they were able to use CRISPR to actually edit, make a very, very selective edit to people's genome and remove the sort of defective genes that were causing this illness. So great
Hmm.
victory. And people say this could cure all illnesses. We could
Yes.
eventually completely conquer disease. We could even conquer old age and so on. But then, of course, it could also be used as a weapon. It could be used to
Yes.
create designer people, all sorts of sort of monstrosities that we might not be able to control potentially. So yeah, absolutely a fantastic technology within the right sort of regulatory framework. Okay, so having given that sort of very basic primer, pretending quite effectively, I thought that we actually know what we're talking about. Let's sort of get into this. So tell us very broadly, what even is biotechnology?
Yeah, so depending on who you ask, it is everything, like we talked about. There's a lot of interest right now in CRISPR, but that's one little piece of biotech that's really exciting and kind of making new moves, and it's new and fresh. But it shows up everywhere. It's kind of like the Taylor Swift of science. And everyone has their own definition and their own take on it. Some of them really like parts of it, folklore girl over here. Other people really
Mhm.
don't like any part of it. And this is really shaping the next decade, whether you're ready or not, for what this all means. The NIH, or the National Institute of Health, calls it any tech that was built on the life sciences. So think gene editing, vaccines, therapeutics, but then we also have the USDA in here, and they focus on how this can improve crops, animals, microorganisms for food and environmental benefits. And then we have the OECD, which goes even bigger, framing biotech as an engine for innovation across medicine, manufacturing, energy, and sustainability. So in practice, biotech, like CRISPR therapies that we talked about, biomanufactured chemicals, drought resistant crops, synthetic biology. Basically, if it's alive or once was, someone is figuring out how to engineer it.
Okay, so biology as infrastructure. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
So with biotech touching everything from healthcare to climate policy, how exactly has the US regulated it so far?
Well, the short answer is poorly coordinated. The US government. The
Yes.
long answer is 18 agencies walk into a bar and nobody agrees on who's buying the first round. Historically, the NIH has funded medical research, the USDA oversaw biotech with crops, the FDA regulated the medical products, and the NSF backed academic science. Each silo had its own thing going on. It worked fine when biotech meant lab experiments and maybe some pharmaceuticals, but now that biology is powering energy, defense systems, agriculture, supply chains, climate tech, the old model is like trying to run the modern internet on dial up. The 2025 National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology, or NSCEB, basically said, hey, Congress, we're really falling behind China. Please coordinate. Please. Biotech is now national security, it's economic competitiveness, it's public health, it's climate resilience, all rolled into one. And the commission's conclusion, biology is not just background science for nerds anymore, it's infrastructure.
Okay, so yeah, that's pretty wild, really. So, okay, let's get to the main character in this story then, the National Biotechnology Initiative Act. So, what does the bill actually do?
Yes, so the NBIA is Congress's attempt to take the federal government's biotech spaghetti and turn it into, well, something closer to a lasagna. Layered, structured, and possibly even edible.
Wow, I must admit, I've never really considered a biotechnology lasagna before. Next time I eat pasta, it'll never look the same again.
Yeah, and you might be making it with genetically modified spinach. Who knows? But this bill essentially does four major things. It creates the National Biotechnology Coordination Office, or the NBCO, which inside the executive office of the president, and its job is to align federal decisions, resolve turf wars, develop a national biotech strategy, publish a 5-year plan.
Aha. Okay, so this is basically then the government saying we need at least one adult in the room.
Exactly. And then the bill gets into streamlining federal regulation, which is something that we talk about all the time. But right now, some biotech products are under these multiple different agencies, and these innovators call it a maze. Critics call it a safety net. And the NBIA tries to harmonize the definitions and reviews process to reduce delays for low-risk technologies without weakening oversight.
Wow, good luck with that. I mean, how difficult it is to regulate even quite simple things. Trying to regulate this is a nightmare. But anyway, okay, so what else what else does this amazing bill do?
Yeah, so we talk about how regulation stifles innovation, but also not having the right people in the room to work on stuff is a huge problem. So this bill also works to build the biotech workforce. And it's not just scientists. We're talking engineers, data analysts, biosafety experts, and bioliteracy at all education levels. Think STEM, but make it biotech.
Oh, excellent. So maybe I could give my wonderful CRISPR lesson at schools across the US.
I know that they would be seated and ready. And finally, this bill coordinates across agencies and international partners. So this includes the USDA for ag tech, the DoD for biosecurity, and global partners on ethics and safety.
So it's what we're basically talking then is a federal group project. So I wonder which agency is actually going to be the lazy kid who sits in the corner and doesn't do anything.
Well, I know my role in it. I was always the leader.
I bet you were. Okay, then. So why should anyone actually care about a bill with this many acronyms and syllables?
Yes, acronyms and syllables. What Beyond the Bill Number is all about. Because biotechnology is moving fast and regulation is moving, let's call it heritage speed. Its outdated or inconsistent rules can really slow down medical breakthroughs, climate solutions, and supply chain innovation. All things that are really important and that other countries, particularly China, are pouring money and resources into to build this biotech infrastructure. If the US doesn't build a cohesive strategy now, we risk losing leadership in the field that may define the early 21st century.
Wow. Okay, so yet another technology then that China seems to be leaping ahead. The West and America in particular falling behind, and it's going to be crucial to the future. We seem to be hearing it a lot, don't we? Okay, so who's cheering for the NBIA and who's sharpening their pitchforks?
Well, if you could imagine, it's a pretty charged area. So supporters, including the American Society for Microbiology and the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, say that the NBIA will spur innovation, boost economic growth, and help agencies stop tripping over each other. Critics worry that streamlining could quietly weaken safety standards. The NBCO might not have any real authority over these powerful agencies, and it needs long-term funding to make it actually work, which we all know what a challenge that is with our government switching back and forth all the time, with priorities changing, and with, a flick of Trump's pen changing almost every single thing that we thought we could expect. Everyone agrees that something needs to change, though, which is pretty good. That's not a bad place to start. But the fight over how hard to push the accelerator is one that is definitely contentious.
Absolutely. So it's a little bit different from some of the things we look at. Then it doesn't seem to be as violently partisan as a lot of the issues. Though I'm sure there's the parties are all trying to work out what their angles would be on this. Okay, so let's have a look more carefully then. So where is this bill currently?
Yeah, so the bill was referred to the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, in addition to the committees on Foreign Affairs, Agriculture, Energy and Commerce, and Education and Workforce back in April, but it hasn't been picked up since.
Yes, I think all of those committees just shows what a complex issue this really is. A bit disappointing, but perhaps not entirely surprising that Congress doesn't really want to get stuck into something as complex as this. Not particularly encouraging. But then maybe there's something in it because the NBIA isn't alone, of course. Congress has a whole supporting cast of biotechnology bills. So let's walk through some of those.
Yes, very true. And these bills that we're actually going to talk about, I used BuildTrack 50's AI Similar Bills feature to look into because I was very curious what else might be out there and kind of what this could touch. Because, like we said, this touched all of these different areas. It's a very overarching bill. But, you know, my little policy wonk brain was like, there's got to be some stuff that's a little bit more directed, focused, and narrow what's out there. So, using that feature on BuildTrack 50, I prepared you something that you need to buckle up for because Congress has brought receipts and plans. First up is Senate Bill 2692, which is the Agricultural Biotechnology Coordination Act. And this bill gives the USDA its own Office of Biotechnology Policy, which would centralize research, regulation, communication, and commercialization of what they're up to. It also forces coordination with the EPA, FDA, states, academics, and industry. So the translation here is that agricultural biotech goes from a side quest to main storyline. This bill was read twice and referred to the Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry back in September of this year.
Okay, so basically, the USDA finally gets its own biotech command center instead of scribbling notes in the margins. But again, the bill doesn't really seem to be going anywhere. Okay, so what's next?
Well, the DoD has officially entered the chat, the biotech chat, that is, with HR 6009, the Defense Biotechnology Strategy Act. So this bill requires national security-focused biotechnology strategy, biomanufacturing networks, updated military specifications to integrate biotech, and NATO coordination. It's kind of the Pentagon saying biotech isn't just medicine, it's mission critical. And this was referred to the Committee on Armed Services in addition to the Committee on Foreign Affairs earlier in November this year, so actually just earlier last month. So there's definitely stuff happening, but again, it's not going to get picked up before the end of the year.
Yes. The military bill, of course, is the most terrifying because that's all about using this biotechnology to create horrendous new weapons or hopefully how to defend against them if somebody else should do that. And nothing says modern military readiness like making sure NATO is also reading from this biotech group chat.
Yes, we'll see how the NATO part goes, especially these days. But that then brings us on to the National Biotechnology Safety Act, so not a bad follow-up to the defense one, which is Senate Bill 2697, and this is the safety backbone. So this instructs the NSF to launch a major research program on biotechnology risk assessment, so a very important piece of this puzzle, and it has a two-part National Academy study, a long-term science-backed evaluation of the benefits, risks, and policy gaps, very important thing to note, and this is how we would kind of future-proof this oversight. In September, this was read twice and referred to the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions.
So finally, a bill that says, maybe we should understand the risks before we invent all this Jurassic Park stuff and have dinosaurs running amok through our cities.
Yes, but wouldn't you still go to Jurassic Park if it existed and you knew you would die from watching the movies?
Oh my God, absolutely. Face to face with a dinosaur, I'd be right there. Okay, so what's the what's the last bill then?
All right, so finally we look at Senate Bill 2696, the Foundation for Enabling Biotechnology Innovation Act, or FEBI. This creates the FEBI, a nonprofit accelerator to strengthen public-private partnerships and speed up commercialization. This gets into this whole innovation and needing to kind of put things faster, better, and stronger that we can with the public world, with the private sector, and trying to get some kind of partnership there. Because a lot of the smart minds want to work in the private sector because that's where the money is. So, This must build education programs, develop expert
Mm-hmm.
advisory panels, and create a plan to become self-sustaining within 5 years. This is how ideas leave the lab and actually become products that can be part of our society. This also was read twice and referred to the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions back in September.
Okay, so you put all of these bills together into one big lump, and you have the brain, you have the stomach, you've got the biceps, the immune system, and then finally a personality to bring it all together.
You could definitely say that Congress has maybe accidentally built a biotech Voltron.
Excellent. So, what's the big picture takeaway here, then? Why is Congress suddenly treating biotech like it's the next interstate highway system?
Well, because it is. Biotech is poised to shape everything from national security to medical breakthroughs to food resilience to climate mitigation. These problems are here and now. Everyone in the world understands that they're here. And if Congress is finally going to recognize that the US can't afford to be reactive and have this fragmented approach, maybe we can save ourselves a little bit. The NBIA is really the connective tissue, but all of these other ones really fine-tune these different places like agriculture or handling defense. Like we said, it's not necessarily that we also want to be engineering these weapons, but that doesn't mean other nations aren't going to be engineering those against us. So there's a little bit of being proactive, but also having our defense secured. But we need to do that safely, and we can't always, trust everybody's goodwill, especially these days.
Absolutely.
And we need innovation and commercialization with this. We want to be present with that in the world. So this is a huge problem. And if these bills work as intended, they can really mark a major turning point in somewhere that is turning with or without us and shifting biology from this kind of scientific niche to a core national strategy.
Excellent. So basically, if we get it right, we can cure all these diseases, we can all be immortal, and we can avoid creating the zombie apocalypse. Which is, of course, the main aim here. Okay, great. Well, so that's our dive into the biotech universe, where the genes are edited, the policies are complicated, and the acronyms multiply faster than E. coli.
So true. Well, that is all for today. You can find the full blog and track every bill we discussed today at BillTrack50.com.
And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share, especially with your friend who swears CRISPR is basically sci-fi.
We'll see you next time on Beyond the Bill Number, where policy is dense, but we promise the conversation isn't.